Hey guys, it's Toneshifterz here. Today I'm just going to be talking through how to use Cubase in a 45-minute video. So I'm going to show you all the basic functions on how to navigate, how to load plugins, how to put in audio tracks, how to put in samples, and how to arrange those samples in Cubase. Plus some other tips and things that I'm going to go through, which is super basic, but I mean, if you're a beginner and you open up your DAW and you're like, what the hell do I do? It could be really daunting when you open up a sequencer and you're like, whoa, what's going on? There's like so many buttons and functions and I don't know where to start. So I think this video is a kind of good video for all the beginners out there who want to use Cubase but really don't know how and want to get started. Okay guys, let's get straight into it. So we've opened up Cubase over here. This is Cubase 8.5. I've got 9.5, but because it's fully 64-bit, I still haven't moved fully over to that yet, but essentially it runs the same. Anyway, to open up a new project, you just go File, and then you click on New Project, and then you just select an empty project. I've set up some templates, but we can get into templates in another video. Press Create, and I've set here a tutorial folder. I can make a new folder if you like. You can call it tutorial 2 and press OK, and then it's going to open up this project file. You want to make sure that you save the project, tutorial 2. You save the project, sorry, by pressing Control S or Command S. You can also go File, Save, or File, Save As, and then you can change the name. I can add an 01. Now guys, this is going to be a super simplistic, basic, bare bones kind of tutorial about how to use Cubase, how to navigate through the windows, through the certain systems, how to import audio tracks, and how to import instrument tracks. So if you're more advanced than this, you can just skip this and move on to something else. But if you're a beginner and you really want to use Cubase, then yeah, this will show you how to navigate through Cubase and use all the basic functions, so that will help you get started. Alright, so the first thing I want to go through is the basic functions of Cubase. You've got the certain windows that you work in. You've got your sequencer window, which is this one right now here. In this window here, you put in your audio channels and your samples, and you arrange them into however you want. The second window is your mix window, and in this window you have all your mix faders, and the shortcut for that is F3. So if you just press F3, it's going to bring that up really quickly. Over here you have different options like routing and inserts and EQ, and that's using the stock Cubase EQ. But if you've got your own EQ, like for example FabFilter, you just click here on the arrow and you type in the plugin that you want. So let's just say FabFilter Pro Q2. Then you double click it. There's your EQ. Then you can double click. You can add some highs. You can add some lows. You can do whatever you want. Essentially, it works the same with all plugins. If you want a compressor, you just search for a compressor, and we can put the stock Cubase compressor on there, and away you go. To get rid of it, you just click the white button again, and then you go to No Effect. So let's get out of this window. The next thing you need to know is your transport bar. Pressing F2 will bring up this bar here. You can click on the outside gray area and you can move it around wherever you want. There's a lot of functions here, but I mean the basic things you need to know are like the tempo. So here we can make it, let's say we're writing hardstyle. Let's put 150 beats per minute. Here you can change the time signature. Normally dance music is just 4 to the floor music, so we just keep it as 4/4. Okay, so the next function, I think we want to import an audio channel. So let's right click over here, add audio track. Now I've made my own shortcuts. So you can see here it displays them as Shift A. To add an instrument track, it's Shift I, but they're my own shortcuts. And to do that, you can go to File, Key Commands, and you can find the certain key command that you're looking, and yeah, you can change that. Add track, audio. See how mine is Shift A? You can literally just click there, type Shift A, and assign, and that's it. You're ready to go. I like to make my own shortcuts for things that I like to do a lot, because that way it helps my workflow and it helps me produce quicker, faster, more efficient. So let's add an audio track. Right click again and we click add audio track. It's going to ask us if you want to do it in stereo or mono. Most of the cases you want to do it in stereo. I mean, if you have a mono sample, then yeah, you can do a mono channel. But yeah, most of the time you just want to do a stereo channel. So we want to add the track, and now we've got an audio track. So now if I go to my mixer window, you'll see that the corresponding channel is in the mixer window right now. So let's add a sample. To add a sample, you can either drag and drop from your from Windows Explorer, you know, or you can go to File, Import, Audio File. So this is just my kick folder. Let's say we want, I don't know, let's pick a kick. Let's choose this kick. As you can see, it's imported there onto the channel. I really like how Steinberg shows the waveforms with Cubase. It's pretty clean, pretty easy to follow. There is some software out there where it's not as clear as you'd like, and you don't really know what's happening. But with the sample editing and audio editing in Cubase, I find it really efficient and really good. Now, to edit the sample, you have these tools up the top here. You got the normal sizing tool, which just allows you to move the sample wherever you want. You've got the sizing, which moves the content. So for example, if I grab this with this tool and I move it in, that's what it's going to do. Then you've got time stretching. You can stretch it out. You can also stretch it in. This was your selector tool, so you can select a whole bunch of things, but normally I just use the normal sizing tool to select things. It's kind of the same thing. But I mean, with range selection, you can kind of select, you know, this range and then decide to move only that or delete that, and it leaves that sample there. So I think I don't really use this range function much. I mainly stick to this one, which is the normal sizing. You can also cut your sample with the scissor tool here. You can chop and move along. The thing is, when you want to move the item, you've got to select the normal sizing button again so you can move it. If I have the scissor tool and I cut and then I want to move it, if I click to move, it's just going to make another cut. So you need to move it with the cursor function or the normal sizing function. Next, we've got the eraser tool. It's pretty simple what it does. We've also got the glue function. The glue function allows you to glue some samples together. So let's say we're going to copy this over 4 times or several times. I'm just pressing Control C and then Control D, and that allows me to duplicate the item that's copied. I can highlight those, Control C, Control D again, and that's what it's going to do. Now if I want to glue that, it's just going to make it one file. If I keep pressing that, it's going to glue them. I can highlight everything, click glue, and it's going to make it into one file kind of thing. It's actually not exporting all the audio together. You can still dissolve them, and you can do that by going to Audio and Dissolve Part, and that dissolves it, and then you've got all the separate parts again. But then it's just easier to arrange inside Cubase, especially if you've got a really heavy project and then you're trying to select multiple channels, and then you've selected everything except the first one and you've moved it, and then you've got to change, say I move it over here, and you're like, oh damn, I forgot the first sample. So now everything is off one beat. So then you got to do that and then move it along. Whereas it's much easier if you just have it glued. It's one file, so no matter where you select, it's going to select it. And then you can just move it along. I know this is really basic stuff, really simplistic stuff, but yeah, these are the basic fundamental tools to be able to produce and arrange and make music inside Cubase. Next, you've got your zoom function. I mean, yeah, you can zoom, but you can also use your scroll function over here on the sides. If you just click on it here, or you put the cursor on top, when you use the scroll on your mouse, it allows you to zoom in. Also this one, if you do the same, if you scroll, it makes the width either smaller or taller, depending on how you like to produce. The next one is the mute function. It just allows you to mute samples. So I mean, I can play the thing. Now I can mute these samples in between, so then it's just gonna. So that's what the mute function does. So next is the grab tool. I mean, you don't really need to use this. You it's just literally just grabbing a sample and allows you to move it or do whatever the hell you want. So I just normally go back to the normal sizing tool and use that. Same with the warp grid. I mean, I really don't use it. To use the basic features of Cubase, you don't really need those things. If you stick with the normal sizing tool to arrange and to move things, that's the best way to go. I do use the pencil. I find the pencil, I can draw in certain volumes here, for example. Say my punch is a little bit too loud. It's a kind of manual version of compression. I can get into a video of compression later down the line, but compression is mainly allowing you to compress the sample so that the dynamics are not so different, because you have a lot of things that are soft, you have a lot of things that are really loud, and if you want to kind of condense them so that the volume is sort of equal or at least level with each other, then that's when you start to use compression. I mean, there's also creative uses for compression, and I think, yeah, we can get into that later. Yeah, I use this pencil tool for drawing in. If you hold down Shift, you can also erase the dots that you make. Another cool function I use for the pencil tool is when I edit the actual waveform. If you double click on a sample, it's going to open up a new window, and this is like the editor window. It allows you to edit the sample. And if you click on definition here, you can get right into the nitty gritty of the sample, and you can zoom right into the bits of each sample. So you can see here all the bits, and if I go to, for example, I need to take out one of these. Let's just say this wasn't part of the kick. Let's say this was like a big pop or a big click. I can literally just zero out like this. I'm just literally click the pencil tool, clicking here, 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 and then the click will be gone. Obviously, you have to do the same for the bottom channel. But yeah, you can play with it and muck around with it until you get the sound that you desire. It's also a cool trick to get clicks and pops out of your samples and to clean things up. But that was not a mistake. That was actually part of the sample. So let's just return that in there. All right. So now we're back to the window. And that's kind of pretty much it. These lines are for automation. So for example, if you've got a plugin that you want to automate. So say I want to put in an EQ. Let's open up FabFilter again. And say I just want to filter it down. I want to have it so that only the low end is playing. So now I'm going to go back to my mix window. By the way, to zoom in and out, you can also click and hold in this area here at the top where the numbers are. If you click and hold there, then you move up and down, then it'll zoom in and out, and then you can also move the scrub tool along, and then you can go to wherever you need to go. So if we unmute these samples again, we have a listen. You'll hear that there's no more high end because I cut that with the EQ. Sorry, I should have explained. When you click the E button, it takes you to this little section here, which is like a condensed version of the mixer window for each channel. If you remember, we had this mixer window. It's the same thing here. You can see audio 1 is corresponding with audio 1. And when I press E, it's literally the same here. I've got my inserts there, my FabFilter Pro EQ, and I can also access that when I press F3, and I get that in the mixer window. So here you have the EQ, and to automate it now, we're just gonna click on the function that we want, and then we're gonna click on right, and then we're gonna press, say we want to turn this frequency up. We want to automate that so that the frequency opens up over time. So we're gonna press play here, and then we're gonna turn it up. Now, obviously, I can't see any automation, but it's usually hidden here. When you press this arrow down, it's going to open up your automations tab. And in this section here, If you just click on the tab, if you've automated something just like I showed you, it'll automatically come to the top rather than you having to go into more and find, you know, go to insert, go to fab filter, go to band 1, go to, you know, gain band 1 frequency and then find it. It's much easier to just do it in here first by pressing the right function, pressing play, moving the thing that you want to automate, and then it's done for you. You literally just press volume and it's there. You don't have to go searching for it. So if you go back to, you know, normal sizing again, let's delete this automation. Let's say that's not the automation we wanted. We can just literally click on the line, and then it's going to automate whatever we want it to do. Now, going back to the parabola and the lines, this allows you to draw in certain lines. So for example, you can click here and do a parabola, so it's going to do a curved line, or you can have simply a line going down, a line going up, line going down, or I mean if you want a sine, you can do a sine. Yeah, you can change the quantizing function here to make the sine bigger. So if I do that, you'll see now the quantizing is to one bar, sorry. I can do it to 4, which means it's going to do it to every beat in the bar, which is 4 beats per bar. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's automation. So I think automation is going to take me into quantizing right now. And quantizing is super important when it comes to arrangement. So for example, if you know, you want, you know, if you press 1, if I want to copy paste this, it's going to copy paste to the end of the sample. Now, it's not going to allow me to make the sample smaller than this because it's automatically snapping to 1 bar, which is from 1 to 2, because there's 4 beats in every bar. Remember, when you press F2, we selected a time signature here of 4/4. So there's 4 beats per bar. If I make this 3/4, you'll see now that there's 3 beats per bar. So in order to put 1 kick per beat, you have to put it to 1 to 4. So let's get rid of these. Now we can size it down to 1 to 4. But say you wanted to go smaller than that. Say you wanted to go much smaller than this. Say you wanted to go, you know, you wanted to do a kick roll, which is like, you know, like that. And so on and so forth. The samples can get smaller and smaller and smaller. Essentially, you can turn off snapping, which then allows you to, you know, move the sample. But yeah, it's all dependent on the situation. And most of the time, you want to kind of have quantized beats. You don't really want them off time. So you try to keep them as quantized as possible. A trick I like to do if I have a sample that's a little bit too short, I can get the pencil tool, make an empty event on the channel using the pencil tool. Then I can highlight the two, glue them, and then that'll allow me to copy that on time. Control C and Control D again. So, like I said, always go back to the normal sizing tool. Let's say I want to dissolve that again. We just go to Process, Audio, and Dissolve Part. Now, the next function next to the snapping is the zero crossing. And this is another important tool because you'll find that a lot of samples, you know, maybe you need to cut the sample, let's say here, wherever I've cut it. But you can see at the end here, it's not on this line. Sometimes you can get away with it. I mean, it's not essential, but all this function does is allows you to cut the sample where the 0 is. So where the two samples meet on 0 and or closest point to 0. So in this case, it'll be around here, these points. And then you can slice and move it along. You can also fade the edges by moving the cursor to the top, and then you get this little sideways arrow. allows you to do volume fades. And if you want to hear that in context, if we open up the sample again and turn snapping on, turn zero crossing off, then you can see by pressing P, it's going to put that on loop, and pressing 1 on your number pad, it's going to take your cursor, say your cursor was here, press 1, it's going to take it back to the start of the loop. You need to have this function on, and it's going to play. So you can see what the fading function does, and I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. So the next thing, we've got a sample. Let's say now we want to put in a synth. Now we want to import, let's actually make this 4/4 again. Now we've got 4 beats per bar. You can see 1, 2, there's 4 there. If you want to do it 8/4, you can do it 8/4. Essentially, it's the same thing. But let's keep it at 4/4. Let's import a synth. Pressing P, it's going to put that on loop. We're going to add an instrument track. And we're going to select from the instruments that I've installed. Let's say we want Spire. So we're going to load up Spire. And then you're going to get this section here on the side. And this section here allows you to navigate in the channel. The same thing, when you go to your mix window, it's going to make a new channel for you so that you can control the volume. So if I check correctly, my keyboard should be connected, all MIDI inputs. So now when I play on my keyboard, it's going to play. Let's just put a normal preset, something of mine. Cool. So that's how you load the synth. To record something, you literally just press the record button here, or you can press the asterisk on your number pad. Whatever. I'm not really playing to anything, but when you double click that, you'll see that this window comes up. And I'm sure if you've already been producing, this is probably quite familiar to you. Once again, to arrange the notes that I've played, I need to, change with the quantize. So if I have 1-to-1, I can only move that there. If I click it and move it, it's going to go to there. So I need this to be like, let's say 1/16. Maybe 1/16 is too much. 1/8. 1/8 I think will do the trick if I want to quantize. So now you can highlight all of that and press Q, and then it's going to quantize it and put it on the grid. Now when you quantize, you can also quantize the lengths. You can click on lengths over here. You can fix the lengths so that they all do whatever you've selected. So 1/8. So if I want them to be 1/4, I can fix the lengths here. You've also got other MIDI functions here, allows you to, instead of pressing Q, if I want to undo that, I can just press quantize over there. Essentially, there's many things to do the same thing in production softwares. I'm sure it's the same with Logic, I'm sure it's the same with Pro Tools, I'm sure it's the same with whatever software you're using, Fruity Loops. There's so many ways to do the same thing. So I'm just showing you the ways that I do things, and hopefully you can learn from that, and that'll help you with your production. Now, let's say you wanted to arrange a melody, but I'm playing this right now. Let's just make a melody. Okay, let's put a click track on. By pressing C, it's going to turn the click track on. Now I'm going to press asterisk on my number pad, and it's going to start recording. Okay, so that's a simple melody that I just wrote. Forgive the latency because I'm using a particular sound device in order to record this session, so there's a bit of latency when I'm playing. But now let's say we want to quantize that. Just going to press Q. I can see, you know, each note is on an eighth. If say for example I was on 1/4 and I wanted to quantize that, that's going to move all of these back, really back, and we don't want that. We want that to be where it is, but obviously quantized. So we're going to highlight that. We're going to make sure it's on 1/8, and we're going to hit Q, and it's going to quantize that for me. Now I can click fix the lengths. Then it's going to fix the lengths. Quantize lengths means it's going to quantize it to its nearest length. So say for example this sample was here, it's going to, when I say, you know, quantize length, it's going to quantize it to here. If I do it, say the sample's there, and I press quantize length, it's going to quantize it to there. Whereas quantizing means it's moving the sample back on the grid. So that's the difference. Whereas in this section here, allows you to actually fix the lengths to whatever size you want. So say I want all the samples to be 1/8. I'm going to highlight all of them and just say fix lengths. And that's going to do that. So if I play this back, well, it's playing my melody in reverse. So I'm going to move this here, enlarge that part, make sure snapping is on, press Control A, and that selects everything, and bring it back. Let's say I want to change the notes. I literally can click on the ones I want to change. Let's say I want to change, make a key change. Take it down to the A. Let's say I want to take it an octave down. I hold down Shift and I press down the down button on my keyboard. It's going to take it down. Press up, it's going to take it up. Keep going up as much as I want. Down as much as I want. You can also highlight each sample and move it manually. If you don't want to hear the sound when you're moving it, you can click this function and it's going to turn it off. So then when you move the sample around, it's not going to play every single note. You can also use your cursor functions to move the MIDI notes. So if I press up, down, it's going to move it like that. If I press Shift, it's going to select the next sample. If I hold Control, it's going to actually move the sample left and right. So that's basically how to navigate inside the MIDI side of things, how to quantize, how to do the basic functions. And yeah, let's head to the mix window and let's see what things we can do. Maybe we should get this in key first. So what key are we in here? So I'm going to take it up. It's not my greatest melody, but it's just for show right now. So yeah, let's go to the mix window and let me explain what you can do here. Now let's say I want to group these two channels so that they're going to one channel. I can right click them once I've highlighted them, so I press that and then I hold down Shift and click on the next one. Right click and then I can add group channel to selected channels, and that's going to automatically route those channels for you to a group. I'm just going to call it, I don't know, kick and lead. Add track, and that's going to open up a group channel over here, and then when I solo that, it's going to solo both those channels. So when I play, let's just take this E back to the G because it's doing my head in. Now you can see this group has come up here on the bottom, and that's literally corresponding to this channel in the mix window. So every time I'm opening this window, I'm pressing F3. So don't forget that. F3 opens up the mix window. F2 is your transport bar. Once again, when you click the E, allows you to open up this section, which is like a condensed version of the channel rather than opening up your mix window. And yeah, you can also, let's say I want to add a limiter to this, or yeah, inflator, like I like to use a lot of the time. That's going to compress the whole channel, so both things coming in. So I can crank that really hard, but now you'll probably hear that it's going to distort. So that's basically how you use the arrangement window, how you use the mix window. One thing I should mention is you have a master bus, so everything automatically is being sent to your master bus, and you can check that here in the routing up the top. If you click routing, you can see that these are your inputs at the top. So if you have a mic, you can select your inputs to go mic 1 there, mic 2 there, depending on how many inputs you have on your sound card. And these are your outputs. So because I've created a group channel, essentially a group channel is just like another master channel, but it's a master channel before the master channel. So you're literally just grouping these and it's going there. So if I don't want these to go to anything, I can just click on no bus, and then I won't hear anything. The signal's coming in, but it's not leaving this channel and going to the group or the master bus. At the moment it's called stereo out, but let's call it master bus. So you can route things, you know, you want it to go to the group. Let's go to the group, kick and lead, and then I want the group to go to the master bus. I can also send the group to another group. Just say I have multiple groups. Say I have one group for my percussion, one group for my leads, one group for, I don't know, my pads, and I want all of those groups to go. You know what? I'm going to show you. So I'm going to create another group channel. I'm going to call this leads, and I'm going to call this percussion. Then I'm going to call this just groupie. So say I just want my lead to go to the leads group, so I'm going to click on this and click leads, and then I want to click on this. We can just make this say kick group. If you double click this, by the way, you can change the name. So this is lead 1 and this is kick 1. So when you press this, I can select it to go to the kick group. I'm selecting this to go to the leads group. I don't really have percussion, but let's just pretend I do. Let's just pretend this is the percussion channel. I want to send that to my percussion group, and then say I want to send this group and this group and this group to this group here. Then I can just select this to go to there, this to go to that one, and this one to go to that one. Now they're all going to this group. So I mean, the possibilities are endless. You can do so many things. Say you've run out of channel space here, you can just send it to a group, and then you have more channels that you can use. Cubase 9 allows you to have a lot more channels. So that's creating group channels. That's kind of it with the mixer window. You can also add effects channels, and normally you want to do that for like your reverbs. So you've got, let's say I like to use red line reverb a lot. So I'll add the track in. My preset automatically loads, so the one that I like to use all the time. So in order to get reverb on the lead, I'll leave this window, and let's just say I want to play. I can either do it through here. I'll show you how to do it through this. When you press E to edit the channel settings, you've got your insert section, and then you've got your send section. And your sends, essentially what you're doing, you're sending the signal to the red line reverb here, and then inside Cubase it's sending it back. So essentially on a normal analog desk you would need to send, just like we're doing here, 0 dB. I think that's too much. Let's just put, I don't know, minus 24 dB. And then essentially on an analog desk, you need to send that signal back to your effects channels so that you can hear it. Whereas in Cubase, it's automatically done for you. It's done in the back end. So now if I press something, you should hear reverb. If I over exaggerate it, it's a lot of reverb now. I can turn it off and then it's gone. And what you're hearing is the reverb from the plugin. So if I go into here, let's turn this off, turn this off. Now it should be pretty dry. When I activate that send, we got the reverb again. This just controls the amount of reverb. This button here allows you to do pre and post fader. So what that means, if you do it pre-fader, it's going to go this color. Actually in Cubase 9, post-fader is this color and pre-fader is this color. But what pre-fader is, so say for example you turn this down, it doesn't affect the volume going to a reverb. So if right now, if I was to play this, you wouldn't hear any reverb. But if I put this on pre, it'll be sending this signal exactly to minus 236 dB. So now I'm only getting a wet signal. I don't have any of the dry signal. If I turn this up again, the reverb level hasn't changed at all. So I can change this level, go crazy up. The reverb level is staying the same because that's what I've set it to here. Whereas when I do post fader, as I adjust my channel here, it adjusts the volume over there as well because it's post fader. So I mean, generally I use post fader unless I need to control something or do something in a particular way, then I'll use the pre fader. But majority of the time, 9 out of 10 times, I'm using the post fader. Now, you can also do this in the mix window by pressing F3. You can go to the lead channel and you press sense, and essentially it's the same thing. So I can just press the down tab on the next section, select the red line reverb. I mean, now I've got 2, but then essentially you do the same thing. You select how much you want, and then if you put your cursor up here, you can see that there's a pre-fader function. You click that, it'll go pre-fader. So that's pretty much the mix window. I mean, there's a lot more. There's like, you know, your mute, your solo. This deactivates all your listen states. This is your allows you to read your automation. You can turn that off if you don't want your automation to be read, like I was showing you before. If you don't want this, oh, I took the automation off. But you remember all the crazy automation. I could just automate the volume. You know, right now it's gonna read this automation. But if I turn the read off, it's literally going to give me a grayed out line. It's going to take an average of the volumes that I've selected, and it's going to play at that volume. Whereas if I press the read automation function, it's going to actually read the automation. So it's going to start at 0 and it's going to take the volume down to whatever it is here, which is minus 10.8. And then you know the write function. You can use that inside your plugin and write whatever automation that you want. Just make sure you turn that off when you're done. But yeah, essentially it's the same thing in the sense. So that's pretty much the mix window. So the only other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about was your devices. So if you go to devices here, this allows you to access a range of settings. I'm not going to go through every single one. I'll just go through the main ones, you know, a couple of them. you have the VST instruments section, and that shows you pretty much what synths that you have. So if I want to load up another synth, let's say I want to load up Sylenth, I'm going to add track. It's also going to show me there. I can turn off and on the instruments. I can also freeze the instrument. So what that does, it exports the actual instrument. It exports an audio file in the background, and then I'll show you. So it's exported now that as an audio file. So now when I play this, it's still going to be there, but the synth is now not loaded. So say you need more processing power, you need some extra computing power, that's the function to use, and then that way you can freeze the instrument. The only problem with that is that you can't change it, you can't move it, and then you'd have to unfreeze it again. It'll ask you if you want to keep the freeze files. I don't think you need to. You can always just click unfreeze, and then it'll remove those audio files, and then you're back at the synth. The E button on all of Cubase is the same. It's going to open up whatever you're selecting. So if it's the channel, it's going to open up the edit channel section. If it's on the synth, it's going to open up the synth, and it's going to allow you to edit the synth. Spires looks a little bit more complicated than maybe Sylenth, or maybe Sylenth looks even more complicated. But once you get to know the basic functions, all the synths kind of work the same way. You just need to learn them and understand them. The best way to start is just by selecting some presets, some patches that you've got off the internet, that you've purchased, that you've got from certain sites, or off your friends, and you can load them several ways. I mean, you can load them by loading up, you got some factory banks here. You can load up a bank and you just go through your folder settings, or you can load up a preset here. You've got certain, I'll just load up some hardcore leads for a second. That's the wrong channel. I want to select on this channel, so I just click on the channel, and I have to make sure this button is selected, so then I can play. So I mean, that's kind of the basic functions. That's how you use Cubase. That's how you navigate. That's how you use the mix window. You've got to use the arrangement window. It's all about copying and pasting. It's like building a house. You've got to start with the foundations. You've got to build the track from the ground up. You've got your kick bass, you've got your kicks, your claps, your snares, and all of these things come in time. You have to get samples. You have to build your sample libraries. You have to create your own sounds and build from that. So if we go back to the devices, I can show you the device setup. This is kind of your settings for the audio and for the MIDI, also for the video stuff if you're going to import and do audio for video. But here you can select your different sound cards and things like that. I normally use the Mo2, but at the moment I'm using this voice meter, which allows me to record my the signal and the screen coming through. So that increases my latency a little bit, which means when I press a key on the keyboard, it's delayed by a certain number of milliseconds. You can also go to this section here, which is a really handy function, plugin manager. This allows you to check all the different plugins that you've got. You can see what VST version it is, if it's VST 3, VST 3.6, what's the latest version that you've got. And a handy function is you can see which plugins of yours are 32-bit. It tells you here, Win32, because moving to Cubase 9.5, you're going to need to get all 64-bit plugins. That's the plugin manager. I mean, you can do also a bunch of cool things. You can also do a bunch of cool things with the plugin manager, like, you can make your own kind of plugin list. You can arrange them in a certain way. So if you want to just put EQs, let's just say test. Let's just say I want to categorize all my EQs. I'm just going to type EQ in the search bar. It's going to bring all of those up. I'm going to drag those in there, create a folder, call it EQ. Then I can select all of these by shift clicking all of those and put it into the folder. Now I've got an EQ folder. So when I go here and I want to, add an EQ, I've got a folder here called EQ. Now, the problem with having a plugin manager is that when you add a new plugin, you have to automatically add it to your own folders. Whereas with the default list, it'll automatically add them in the arranged categories. So I just usually stick to default list. But I mean, if you do like to have your own lists, by all means, go for gold. And then you have the preferences over here, file, preferences. You've got, you know, all the different kind of settings. If you haven't noticed, if you've used Cubase already, I've changed the color scheme to match the original Cubase. And you can do that through here. As you can see, there's a different colors here. The project worked area color, I've made it like the original one. Whereas the original, the new Cubase is actually black here in this area. You can change editing functions, you know, different, like what time stretching it's going to use on the time stretch function over here. There's a lot of functions that you can use through here. I mean, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but that's something you guys can go through and muck around with and learn on your own. This is literally just a basic video to help you guys get started. Alright guys, well, I mean, that was pretty basic. It's all the simple functions on how to use Cubase. I hope you've learned something from it. I hope you can take this away and start producing and start making content, start making music, start recording whatever you need to record. And yeah, happy using Cubase. Take it easy. Peace.